Welcome to the Knights of Awakening interview series. In this video, we share with you an interview we conducted with Frater Oz, a fellow YouTuber. Frater Oz talks to us about the works of Aleister Crowley. Thank you, and as always, awaken the night within.
Yes, I'm bringing in Frater Oz. He is a Thelemite, okay, and a member of the O.T.O. I'm bringing him in right now.
What thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh,
pretty good. How are you guys doing here?
Well, it's Sunday. We're alive. We're breathing, and we're on the phone with you. So stuff's going good so far.
So I got to admit, I've been stalking the Thelema and the O.T.O. for many years. I've never joined. I've always been really curious, and I've actually integrated a lot of what I understand to be their understandings into my practice. And we just thought we should reach out and get one of you guys and bring you in here and let everybody know what Thelema is about and how they can get involved if they so choose.
Well, that's great. So how long have you been reading Crowley?
I haven't been reading Crowley. I've been, I look up quotes and I read everything that's posted on the internet, where you can find, veins of this and that. I have my, do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. I have my own understanding of that, and it goes right into hand to your video where you explained it. So I don't think I'm that far off base. I really like the whole magical system part of it. From what I gather, bits and pieces off the internet. It's really one of those things I don't really feel you get the full meaning of it unless you are there. And that's what I try to do when I'm reading. I try to be there from what I'm gathering. So with that said, let's dive right in, man. What is Thelema? Is it a magical fraternity or?
Well, while there are magical fraternities that are Thelemic, such as the O.T.O, the Thelema itself is basically, it's a hard thing to put into words. It is based upon an individual's personal understanding of a book called the Book of the Law. The Book of the Law was received by Aleister Crowley. I say received. It's an inspired document that he said was dictated to him. And he received this book in 1904 in Egypt. And Thelema is basically an individual's understanding of and relationship to that book. There are a lot of different organizations that consider themselves to be Thelemic, O.T.O, and several other groups, AA. But as far as what is Thelema, it's something that's really hard to put into words because it's different for everybody. It's all about the Book of the Law, really, and your personal understanding of it.
What is the difference between being just a general Thelemite or being a member of the O.T.O or being a member of the AA? Are they all the same thing, or do they mean different things?
Well, they're very different. O.T.O and AA, to me, are different branches of, or different ways of approaching Thelema. So the AA, which I'm not a member of, so I don't claim to speak for them, the AA is more of a individual system where it's more of a teacher-student type relationship, only the member is encouraged to do all their own work that are just kind of have a little bit of guidance. And there's no social aspects or group work of any kind involved with AA. And it is a teaching order, if I didn't say that before. O.T.O, on the other hand, is not a teaching order. It is more of a social and fraternal order. Of course, through the initiatory system, there are things to be learned, but at the same time, there are no lesson plans or specific practices that you are expected to adhere to.
Okay.
OTO presents the Gnostic Mass publicly, and that's basically the central ritual. And it's a great ritual. If you're anywhere near an OTO body, you should go check it out. They're public, so anyone can attend. You don't have to join.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Always fancied it being kind of a secretive thing.
No, not really. I mean, the EGC is very public. It presents the Gnostic Mass in a public format, and provides baptism and things, which is viewed differently by Thelemites than by the Christian Church, for instance.
Right.
But still, it's not so secretive. A lot of people use magical mottos, which are your chosen name in the church or in the OTO, and they may keep their affiliation with OTO secret. But the OTO is not necessarily secret.
Okay.
They're more like a order with secrets than a secret order.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
That sounds a lot like what I hear in the Masons. I am a Freemason, and
right.
That's
Yeah.
pretty much what we are.
It's kind of similar. I mean, originally, in its original form, OTO was loosely based upon Freemasonry. And there are a lot of OTO members who are Freemasons, and so there are similarities there.
And gentlemen, if I may, can I chime in, David, just for a second?
By all means, go ahead.
We hear a lot of acronyms here, and I'm kind of a dummy when it comes to this. That's why don't be offended if you don't hear me talk a whole lot today, Oz, because actually this is my day to learn. I don't know a whole lot about this. David's a little further along than I am. Can you tell me what OTO and AA stand for?
OTO stands for Ordo Templi Orientis, which means the Order of Oriental Templars. And AA stands for Argentum Astrum. And I'm not all that clear on all the AA stuff, to be honest with you. I'm not a member.
All
and
right. I appreciate it. So, with your group specifically, what is the overall mission? What does your group exist to serve, or what is their overall objective? I guess I should say.
Well, the OTO's mission, as conceived by Crowley, is basically to establish the Law of Thelema throughout the world, to be the voice in a way of Thelema, and to promulgate Thelema, which is basically to spread it and to make people aware of it without necessarily attempting to convert people or sway them. Let's see, the mission statement on the U.S. Grand Lodge website is actually right here in front of me, and it says, "Our mission is to effect and promote the doctrines and practices of the philosophical and religious system known as Thelema." So that pretty much speaks for itself.
Just to kind of clarify it for myself, when you say promote and all this, I don't see you guys going door to door like you would see with Jehovah's Witnesses, Christians. Basically, you guys exist when people seek you out, then you help them. If not, then you don't really go picking at them.
Well,
right?
Yeah, that's very true. Okay. That's very true. A promulgation, from at least my understanding of it, isn't about standing on a corner on a soapbox with a microphone or beating on people's doors or whatever. It's about making the information available and trying to allow people to be exposed to it, because it's important that people, like I say, come to their own personal understanding of it, and when you try to shove it down their throat, that's just not the way it turns out, No matter who you are.
Yeah, it usually gets lost. It usually gets lost.
Exactly.
When you try to force something down somebody's throat. David and I can certainly agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So you were talking about the Law of Thelema. What is the law? I know it's a whole book, but it's been concised down to one statement, has it not?
Yes, the law is do what thou wilt.
Okay.
In the book of the law it says, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It also says, there is no law beyond do what thou wilt. Now this is kind of touchy to try to explain things for people in the Book of the Law once again, because it goes back to allowing people to come up with their own personal understanding of the book. But it's widely known that the phrase, do what thou wilt, does not mean do whatever you want, or it's very much a discipline. To do your will, or the Thelemic idea of will, which is the true will, or one's actual nature, what you are meant to do. It could be thought of like destiny, but I prefer not to look at it that way personally. I just think that individuals are kind of naturally inclined towards certain things, and the closer you can get to fulfilling those things, the better off you'll be, and the easier it will be to attain your goals, because the universe will be working with you rather than against you.
Mm-hmm. So to kind of deviate from the questions that we had agreed upon, at this point I have to ask, how does one become familiarized with one's will? I mean, is it as simple as, right now I wanna host a show, or later on I think I'll go to the store, or is there a more profound meaning to that?
Well, that's a really good question, and it's hard to say. There's lots of methods that Crowley has laid down to try to get yourself closer to your will, but basically it's all about you. It's all about how you perceive what you're supposed to be doing, causing the least amount of restriction on yourself and others. It's hard to say. I don't feel like I've personally come to the knowledge of my own will in that sense, of being able to put it into a few words. But I do get senses of things that feel like it's the correct path that I should be on. And I feel like if it's not, that the obstacles start to arise and there becomes resistance. So it's a hard thing to say about how one would actually discover their true will as a finite thing that could be put into so many words.
Well, that's an honest answer and must be respected.
Sure. The thing is, I think all too often we try to put things in too many words, and again, it starts to lose its real meaning. So, yeah,
exactly. Language is very limited, and Crowley emphasizes that a lot, especially when talking about different states of consciousness and whatnot.
Sure. I could say, David, I would say it's not all too different many of the paths that we've come across, or that we walk ourselves according to to talking about the will. There has to be a balance of emotion. There has to be taking responsibility for your choices and understanding that those choices are going to take you to a place, whether you wanted it to or not. You need to make better choices, type of thing. So I can understand. I can kind of understand where you're going with this.
Well, I'm glad. I'm making some sense. It is kind of hard to put into words. It really is. So, but you're right. But taking responsibility for your own choices and knowing that only the choices that you make are what is going to determine the outcomes in your life. Right. Taking responsibility for that and realizing that, and so attempting to create your life to be what you think you would be the best at, or
That's well said, and I would completely agree with it. I think every path has a little element that makes them similar to all. Without understanding yourself or your motives, you're not going to get very far in anything. So you were talking about a lot of these different organizations are public. How many people are involved? Are we talking thousands or what?
In the U.S., Grand Lodge, we have about 1,200 members, as it was stated in the new report that came out. And that's, there are members who are not necessarily active who still come to events and stuff like that. I don't know. I've heard worldwide numbers as big as 20,000, and I've heard, as small as 6. It's really hard to say, definitively how many Thelemites are in the world. And and like you said, a lot of paths intersect, and a lot of these things are universal truths that so that some people may be living as a Thelemite but not necessarily identify themselves as a Thelemite or have possibly even heard of Thelema, you know. That's kind of the way it was with me when I found Thelema. The first time I read the Book of the Law and a couple other things, it just impressed upon me so much, you know, that, hey, this is basically what I've been doing my whole life, you know. And a lot of Thelemites have that experience, even though to really understand it takes a long time of studying the Book of the Law. And your positions on a lot of the things and your interpretations of a lot of the things will definitely change and evolve over time for you as an individual.
As someone sitting in the audience listening right now, what is to be gained by joining? Is there any benefits of being in the order?
In the OTO
or AA. I mean, I know AA you said was a teaching order, so obviously you're going to learn something.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, the practices involved with something like AA are chiefly designed, at least they seem from me from the outside looking in, to be chiefly designed to train your body and mind to conform to your will, or to gain complete control over yourself and start to peel away those external layers to begin to know yourself and to be able to identify that will. And that's more what AA is about, you know, is about the individual attaining their own enlightenment. OTO is more social. It's more about developing the social aspects of Thelema and how to live in societies and to promulgate the law of Thelema, surely. But it's also kind of an experiment in Thelemic society, or not even necessarily an experiment, but a manifestation of Thelemic society, which is something that you won't find in AA. Basically, OTO members, at least the ones who are members of AA, do their work with their friends and public work and stuff like that through the OTO, and their private work is done at home through the AA system.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but could I consider it to be a somewhat of a mystery school for self-betterment and self-empowerment?
Sure, definitely. I would consider it that.
Okay.
That's what it's been for me.
Mm-hmm.
As far as OTO, like I say. Mm-hmm. And AA is I would say that's a similar tool.
So, if after the show, and I'll just put it out there now, I will be looking more into this, because just on the surface philosophies we've touched upon on a real basic level, I'm very intrigued, because I find them to be similar to what many of us have been practicing already. I guess that kind of puts me in the same boat you were in, I guess you were saying.
Right.
These orders are out there in the public, these different groups of people, probably scattered all over the country. Is it feasible that I can find, I'm sorry, go ahead, all the world, I'm sorry. But for me locally here in the country, if I wanted to drive to a gathering or an event, or if I wanted to get more information, is there a centralized place where I can find information on where the public chapters are?
Yes, there is. You can go to OTO.org, and that is OTO International, and there you'll find links to OTO in various countries, and it will take you to their Grand Lodge websites. Our U.S. Grand Lodge website lists, I believe, 43 bodies in the U.S.
Wow, that's quite a few.
Where are you located?
I'm located in Nevada.
In Nevada. I'm not sure that we have a body in Nevada. Yes, they're in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, that's not too far.
So we're, it's all over the world. I mean, it's, everywhere from the UK here, Russia, Australia, it's all over the world. Now, you might not necessarily find an OTO body that's near you. You know,
right.
I'd say that we're the largest of the Thelemic groups, but not necessarily in every state or city.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, that's something that'll change someday.
but there is a way that you can participate, you know, in the cyberspace there through the AA, right? When you hook up with those guys, you get one person that you'll be in contact with, and it doesn't really matter where you're at in the world, as long as you can make contact with your mentor, or is it a guide, or whoever you're assigned with?
Right, your superior.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from what I understand, there may be travel involved to get your, you know, after the first year or something like that to get initiations. I'm not exactly sure how all that works, but yes, you can participate in AA from anywhere. Like I said, there's not any social gatherings or anything like that. Like I say, there's possibility that you may have to travel to meet your superior and whatnot, you know, ever so often, but other than that, it's mostly individual work that you can do at home.
Mm-hmm.
As far as OTO, there's not any kind of a correspondence type, since being that it's mostly social and group in nature. There's not really any way to do any type of correspondence course, and it's not a teaching order in the first place, like I said. So, but yeah, AA is something that you can do from anywhere. If you're on the U.S. Grand Lodge website, there's contact information for AA. They don't necessarily have a way that you can contact them by email, but there's a physical address you can write to.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Frater or Frater?
Oh, I've heard it both ways. It's probably technically Frater.
Okay, all right. I just don't want to look like a dummy 100 times today. So, Frater Oz, I just wanted to throw this out here because we know how the world works. The mass when they think of you know, organizations that carry secrets and stuff like this, they always use the word cult. I just want to give you a chance to tell everybody that this is not a cult. This is, you know, type of thing.
Well, it's definitely not. I mean, there's not any kind of mind control going on or anything like that. It's an organization that promotes individual thought, freedom of thought, mm-hmm. and action as well. So, yeah, I would not identify it as a cult.
I just know how some
it's no more a cult than Freemasonry is, put it that
right.
way.
Right, and that was kind of my point. You know, a lot of people, they tend to think of things that they don't have immediate access to as something that you know, we're hiding something from them, or when in truth all they have to do is say the word and they have access to the information they're looking for. They just can't, you know what I mean? So
sure, yeah.
And that was kind of my point. I just wanted to kind of get that out there, and because we know how fear affects some people. If they see an Egyptian symbol, or a lot of people, honestly, who are ignorant to Aleister Crowley, would think that he was just a supreme evil being and a lot of different other things. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I hear that constantly. You know,
sure.
I mean, I'm out there pretty publicly, so I get that constantly from Christians and some pagans also. You know,
sure.
Because, I mean, back in Crowley's day, the newspapers were more like tabloids than newspapers, and they painted him in a really bad light. And you know, and Crowley did do things that you know, that weren't necessarily socially acceptable even today. You know, but it's my belief that he did those things and said those things in order to break people out of their shells and expand their minds, and he also kind of reveled in it, and he played into it, into all the negativity, and you know, and in a way I'm thankful that he did, because had he not, we may not even know who he is today. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be a real shame.
Okay. We have some questions from the chat room that we weren't expecting. Do you care if we throw them out at you?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. 131 says, can someone ask about the practices of yoga and magic and how they relate to finding your will and Thelema?
Wow, that's a really good question. Yoga allows you to clear your mind, asana and pranayama, and also teaches teaches you to disregard your physical senses and introspect into yourself. And this has a lot of different effects, different for different people, as a matter of fact. And introspection in any form can help you to work out problems within your own life. And as far as magic is concerned, it depends on how you view magic, because some people take the view that magic is something that is supernatural in nature and that it is contacting these spirits that are actual external beings. And some people view magic as things that they do in their life, as Crowley had put it. Well, he talked about how if he wanted to publish a book, he would do magic by taking his magical tool, being his pen, and invoking demons and spirits, which are publishers and booksellers, etc. So it can be looked at from a spiritual or non-spiritual standpoint. And the position that I take on this is that it is more material in nature, and that these banishing rituals and solar adorations help you to balance yourself and to remain mindful of the fact that that you have a goal or purpose. And like, for instance, the solar adorations could be considered magic, but they're also something that you do 4 times a day to keep you mindful of the great work. So, as far as magic goes, that's just a topic that is looked at from so many different perspectives that it's hard to say how, for any individual, it really impacts them specifically. And I don't mean to sound like I'm avoiding questions, but it's just hard to, within the context of Thelema, it's hard to say that one thing is that thing for everyone. You can't.
Do you care if I try to give a shot at this question?
Cool. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I was listening to Lon Milo Duquette on Coast to Coast, and he basically said, and this is a real loose paraphrase. It's not even a quote; it's a paraphrase. He basically said that the Eastern yogi and Western magic is doing the same work at uncovering, like you said earlier, uncovering those layers of delusion. Getting rid of all the false ideas and all that stuff. They're basically doing the same thing to get you to your will. It's just Eastern yogi does it inwardly, and Western magic projects it outside of self and does it, out into the, if you wave your hand in front of your, in front of your body, that area that is outside of self is where Western magic will project that and work on it there. So they're basically the same thing. It's just one is inside and the other is out.
Right, and Lon's a great guy at putting things into words like that, at explaining them in a way that they're easy to understand. And I agree with that. I think that magic is a way of dealing with these things outside yourself. And I also think that it helps you to deal with the things inside yourself. And some people are more inclined to one, some the other.
I want to pick a word that you used earlier, and as you've been talking, I've been looking over the Grand Lodge website for the United States. It talks about the same word, the Gnostic part of it. I've always said if I had to be a Christian, if someone held a gun to my head and made me promise to be a Christian, I would probably be a Gnostic Christian. How big of a role does the Gnostic part of it play in your organization?
Well, once again, for some, it plays a big part. For me, I believe that that God, if you could identify it as a separate being from yourself, is within all things and within all of us. And I believe that we all have the ability to tap into that and to achieve that gnosis or oneness with God by exterminating the idea of duality and realizing that all things are indeed one thing, as Crowley has said. Gnosis is a big part of Thelema for me. Seeking that gnosis, which is something that is fairly absent in a lot of other paths, relying on others to administer these things rather than relying on yourself and your natural ability to do this or to attain enlightenment. It's kind of like the difference between groveling before God and realizing that you are at one with God.
Right. Mm-hmm. That was very well said. It brings me to a quick story that David's heard before, and I probably told him on the show, but I had this young student. This student would never leave me alone. He would hit me up at all hours of the night, asking me for the secrets of the Force. Finally, I got sick and tired of it, and I said, look, I'm going to tell you a secret that only the most wise of masters know. But you can't tell them that I told you this. And I'm going to give you the key to the Force, and you'll be the most powerful being on Earth. And this student was very excited by this. He finally had irritated me enough to get me to spill all the secrets. So I made him wait for several minutes. Then after that, I made him wait like another hour. And he was just going to explode. And then finally, when I was done playing with him a little bit, to kind of make him try to soak all this wasted energy in, and then get rid of it, I tell him, okay, the secret of the Force is this, or the key to the Force is this, you. And he didn't say a word. You're the key to the Force. You're the key to God. You're the key to everything. It's just kind of the way people are so busy looking away from themselves to find these different entities, and honestly, they probably all exist because they exist inside us, as you said. Right. I don't believe that I'm one with God. I believe I am God to a point because I was created by God. I can create other things. I can, we all can create things just by giving it a thought. I guess I can agree with what you said, because that's people. I guess are busy chasing ghosts when the thing that they've been looking for is inside them the whole time, right?
Yeah. Definitely. It's something that looking outside yourself is something that has been bred into us, and it's a hard thing for a lot of people to break free from. Crowley talks a lot about that, about what he calls slaves, and the fact that he talks in Magick Without Tears about the fact that 90% of people, if you tell them, if you make them make their own decisions, they're not having any of it. They don't care about it. They are so conditioned to look to others that they don't know how to look to themselves. And that kind of goes back to peeling those layers away. This is the self that I show to the world. This is the self that I show to my parents and family. Well, where is the self that you know for yourself? Where is your real self? And how do you find that? And the journey to finding that is very important.
Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with the teachings of Ramana Maharshi?
I am not.
Okay, he was I don't even know what religion he was, but he basically his main teaching is that the end to all inquiry is the original question, which is, who am I?
Right.
And if you ask yourself, who am I, the brain just goes haywire, and it starts puking up all these answers of trying to give you an example, an explanation of something that you are, and you basically have to exhaust every effort for your mind to get right down to the bottom of it. You are not your clothes. You're not your title. You're not the body you were born into. You're not all of these things. So what are you? And when you strike through everything, and even the ego itself, I'm David. You are Henry. He is Justin. When we get rid of all these notions of who we think we are, what are we left with?
We're left with that oneness, with that gnosis. Exactly. The idea that man is God, the idea that that there is no I, really. And, you know, that's just a falsehood that our brain creates from our experiences, which, you know, is real enough. I mean, I can touch this glass, you know, I know it's there. But at the same time, you look at the glass and you see the other side of it. So we both have different perspectives of it, and there's just no way of getting around that, you know, as far as the ego is concerned. But at the same time, to destroy all those notions is the true gnosis and peace, you know. I can only hope that I will get to that point, you know, at some time during my life. You know, not many people do really attain that, you know.
So you wrote some music, and I've listened to it. It's at the link is at nightsawakening.com. It goes to your MySpace page, Frater Oz Music with a K. I like it. I like it a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll probably end up picking up the CD. I'll probably download it in MP3 when I get the money.
Right.
And do you care to discuss any of that and take us into break where we'll play a sample of that?
Sure. When I started my YouTube channel, where I talk about Thelema, I mostly read the works of Crowley. I made a short video with some excerpts of me speaking lines in the Gnostic Mass set to music, and there was a pretty good outcry on it, and I had someone make a suggestion that I should write a song using a portion of Chapter 3 in the Book of the Law. And I did that, and it just kind of took off from there. I've been playing music since I was 6 or so, you know. My whole family plays. So it was just kind of a natural progression for me, and I've kept up with it. I enjoy it a lot. So I hope you guys enjoy the song.
Okay, and this is Selfless that Frater Oz made. Destroyer, set me free. enjoying talking to Frater Oz on Thelema. That was a song by Frater Oz. A very timely one, too, because it just fit right in with what we were talking about.
It did, didn't it? I like that. You guys must have planned that.
No, we're not that good. We do have a couple more questions from the chat room, if you care to.
Okay.
Okay, it's again from 131. They have left now, but we'll catch it on the replay.
No, they're still here, David.
Oh yeah. Oh, so you're right. Okay. She says, or he says, I'm not sure. What are typical practices of Thelemites? Even though each person is unique, are there specific yoga magic practices that were given by Crowley for Thelema or for members of the OTO?
Yes, there are. You have a ritual called Liber Resh, which is solar adorations. They are performed the 4 stations of the sun: dawn, noon, sunset, and midnight. You can see a video of me reading the ritual and performing it on my YouTube channel. This is to help the Thelemite identify with the sun. It's a very solar philosophy, and it hinges upon the idea that we now realize that the sun is always shining brightly. We don't have the archaic idea that the sun dies and is reborn that people had before they really understood the workings of the solar system. So it helps us to identify with the sun at all hours of the day, and also to keep you mindful of your own personal great work. There's also the Star Ruby, and there are several different rituals that run kind of parallel with other rituals in ceremonial magic, but have been rewritten for the new eon. Being the Star Ruby, the Star Sapphire, there is many rituals. The Mass of the Phoenix. There are many rituals that are associated with Thelema. And also other practices, yogic practices like asana, which is basically putting yourself into a position and remaining there, stilling yourself and stilling your mind. And there are also many other practices that Crowley lined out. They're not necessarily specifically designed for the OTO. They're more so designed for individual work and the AA. Some of these practices are done by people in the OTO because we're all Thelemites. But yeah, there are lots of practices, and they can be found throughout Crowley's works. I recommend buying Liber ABA, or it's also called Magick Book 4. And this outlines many of the practices, and it's really an invaluable resource for any Thelemite. I also recommend Milo Duquette's books highly. His book, The Magick of Thelema, and The Magick of Aleister Crowley. These are also really great books, especially for those who find Crowley difficult to read.
Going back to what you were talking about with the solar theme, you mentioned all hours of the day and all this, and what's going on through my mind whenever I see the sun and its perpetual state. It's sitting there slowly revolving, and the earth is just kind of going around it. That kind of dissolves the concept of linear time to me. Is that part of that lesson too? Is that there is no past, there is no future of basically an ever-present nowness?
Well, I guess you could look at it that way. I've never really thought about that, to be honest with you. I've looked at it more from the perspective of the old eon versus new eon, the old eon being based chiefly in Christianity and all these other religions that identify with this dying and resurrected process, and whereas the new eon makes this recognition that we are each an individual star. As it says in the Book of the Law, every man and every woman is a star, and it helps. These adorations help you to realize this in that way by identifying with our star or the sun. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I suppose you could look at it that way. I just never have really thought about it from that perspective.
Okay. Just some philosophical circles I go in, they really get on the whole nowness thing, because it can help in what you're doing.
Let me ask, as far as your organization goes, what are the organization's views on service to others, things like that? Do you guys have stuff that you do for others? How do you guys view that?
You mean the OTO?
Yes.
Okay.
The organization you belong to. Mm-hmm.
Right. I would say that the OTO is more focused on freeing the individuals that come to the OTO than we are on necessarily charity outside of the order. Individual members do things on their own, those that feel the need. There are other Thelemic organizations that do more charity work. But I would say that it's not necessarily that the order doesn't want to be charitable. It's just that the resources are limited, and we, at least I, as an OTO member, once again, I just want to make sure everybody realizes that I don't officially speak for any organization. All these are just my views. But personally, I think that presenting the Gnostic Mass in a public format, promulgating the Law of Thelema, is doing a big service to mankind, and I think that that's the way that the OTO was really meant to do charity, if you want to call it that.
Well, yeah, and I just want to clarify, not so much the word charity, because that evokes a certain, absolute meaning to most people. I was just curious about, service to others. Every philosophy has its views on that, and just to clarify, it's completely okay. It's completely okay to,
sure.
You know what I mean? It wasn't really a loaded question. It was just a question.
Oh, it was kind of a loaded question.
No, it's fine, because here on our show, we entertain philosophies or paths or organizations that will come out right out and say, our organization, our path, our philosophy is not designed to serve others, and that's completely okay. We understand that although lots of people like to separate the world and everything around them, and they like to have two sides of the coin, David and I, and the goal of this show is to help people understand that the only reason there's two sides of a coin is because we put it there.
Right.
And that all perspectives and all philosophies are good and true in one way or another. So, no, it's completely okay.
Yeah, I mean, compassion is something that Crowley talked in different manners about, and a lot of his views on compassion had to do with the way in which you presented it to a person. He thought that it was degrading to a person to offer them pity and whatnot, rather than allowing that person to pull themselves up. And a lot of people embrace that. Some of the things said in Chapter 2 of the Book of the Law and stuff like that seem on the outset to be mean, just downright mean. But when you look at these things from a more philosophical standpoint and read what Crowley had to say about them, you kind of get the meaning that it's not that there is, it's not that compassion is something that's bad to have. It's that when you degrade someone else by expressing it, you're restricting them. And the Book of the Law says the word of sin is restriction.
Not to change the rhythm or anything of what's going on right now. From the chat room, 131 wants to know if you have any new songs or projects coming out.
Actually, there's a podcast coming out tomorrow that I played a part in. I did a reading of one of Crowley's works, or a portion of it, for the podcast. You can find that at speechinthesilence.com. That'll be coming out tomorrow. I've got a band that's going right now that is not Thelemic in nature. That is another project that I'm into. But we don't really have anything coming up or anything you could go check out. As far as my personal music, Things will be coming. I just wait. I kind of wait until I'm inspired. You know, I have to, or else I don't feel like I feel like the work suffers if I don't.
Sure.
So.
Mm-hmm. So
but yeah, you guys should check out that podcast. It's going to be great. It's the first episode airs tomorrow.
Where do we find that?
At speechinthesilence.com.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that would be findable through your YouTube channel or through your MySpace page or somewhere?
No, it's not. I'm not like one of the...
Speech in the Silence, okay. Can you share with us any more? You know, we're real big into philosophy, and I could talk all day about it. You were talking earlier about totally, you know, don't restrict anybody. Kind of going along that theme. I'm just going to open it up and let you discuss anything you want to talk about, man.
Okay, well, to talk about restriction, it's really what Thelema is against, is restriction of yourself by your own neuroses and psychoses, and, you know, restriction of others. There's a theory that if we are all doing our wills, that there would be no real conflict or restriction, and that's one surefire way to tell if someone is out of line, not necessarily to tell who it is that's out of line, but is when there is restriction caused. You know, I feel like the way our whole country runs is based on restrictions, and although some of them do work to our benefit, I think for the most part these restrictions are unneeded and unwanted by most of the people. I don't know, as far as philosophy goes, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I don't know how much better I could say it than that, to be honest with you. Seek your will, seek your truth, and find it for yourself. You know, I really don't know what else to give you guys, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Just would like to encourage everyone to read the Book of the Law. It can be found on the internet. All you have to do is type the Book of the Law into a Google search. Okay. Go to my YouTube, and I've got a recording of it there. You can find it anywhere, and it's just, it'll take you 20 minutes to read. It's 3 short chapters. Just read it and think of what it means to you, and assimilate it into your worldview is what I would ask of everybody that's listening. Whether you believe that it's some inspired document or just something that Crowley wrote, you know, just see what impression it makes on you and integrate that into your life.
Every story has, you know, an intention or a purpose, and people can find truth in just about everything they read if they're open to it, if they're open to another perspective. I've certainly been guilty of mixing all kinds of religions together that would probably get me killed in some countries. Because I have this saying, I tell people all the time, take out the trash. Get rid of the garbage. Keep the stuff that's good for you. Only you know what's best for you. I don't care what anybody tells you. If somebody tells me that I need to see a priest, I'm only going to see a priest that's going to advise me and not tell me, you know, for example. I think Aleister Crowley has a lot of good things to say if you're open and you're receptive to a different perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Crowley was a big proponent of being smart about keeping things in your life that are good for you and discarding the things that are bad for you. You know,
right.
I believe it was in De Lege Labellum, what I just read for that podcast, that he says, if you are sure of your will and sure of your means, then any actions or thoughts that are contrary to those means are contrary also to that will.
Right.
So, you know, that pretty much exemplifies that you should definitely determine the things that are working against you and discard them.
Sure.
Put them aside.
And that would bring me probably to my last question for you that I have, because I have a lot of stuff I need to look at now based upon our meeting. There's a lot of interesting stuff that I've briefly dug through during the conversation today. And of course, a lot of stuff I really need to get a shovel and start digging, because I need to kind of wrap my mind around this whole thing. Anyways,
there's a lot of digging to be done, too.
Sure. Hey, I got a big shovel, and I have a big bucket to pour all the dirt in. Let me give you an example. I'm not a Christian, but I love the works of Jesus Christ, for example. Here's a guy took compassion to as far as it could go, I think. He wasn't afraid to break stuff, but he wasn't afraid to love everyone, even when they were killing him. But I'm completely not Christian at all. So what I'm saying is, and the reason is because there's too much dogma in a lot of boxed up religions. I guess my question is, does dogma exist in any form in your philosophy?
For some people it does. Some people don't allow themselves to subscribe to dogma, and some do. I believe that you're going to find that wherever you go. And, you know, that kind of talks about what you're talking about, which is the fact that, you know, all prophets are true. And all of these things relate back to these same universal truths. And but it's only the organization and the interpretation that leads to all these negative qualities, like you see. You know, I don't necessarily think that the Christian church is something that should be as dominant as it is, but I definitely do see that there is value in the original message. However, that original message is far removed now from what it most likely was in the beginning.
Right.
So I can definitely see validity in that, you know.
Right.
Where can we buy your music from?
Well, the links are kind of hard to get to. You can find the downloads pretty easily on lulu.com, and then you can look on either my MySpace, that's just under Frater Oz, or my music MySpace, which is listed in your links, and there are banners there that you can click on to get downloads or CDs. They're two separate links. There's also a recording of an audio recording of Crowley's "The Soul of the Desert" that the proceeds benefit the local OTO body here in Dallas. So yeah, I encourage everybody to take a look at those and purchase them if it's your will. You can listen to them on the MySpace before you decide, and I'll appreciate it.
Yep, we will certainly do that. I certainly will. But we'd like to thank you for coming out to the show, man. It's been a wonderful time. It just delights me to know to find other people and other groups of people that are out there doing what I perceive as the right thing, you know. And you can get into the right and wrongs and definitions and labels and all that, and that's real dangerous. But there's an empowerment of the people that I think needs to be brought about. That's why we're called Knights of Awakening. You know, we believe in giving it to them, not trying to hold them down and pin them with it. So we salute you.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I really appreciate you guys asking me to come on today.
Anytime you need us to do anything, man, just give me a holler.
All right, great.
We'll get it out there.
All right, thank you.
It's certainly good to meet people who are strong in their path. And, again, it's not the path that's important. It's the people walking the journey. So we want to thank you for your time, Frater Oz. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Love is the law. Love under will.